Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are watching this. Welcome back to the Since I Was Young podcast for all things heart. Well, Midlothian, joining you on our 70th episode is myself, Hugh Ramsey, and Alan Scrimger. Alan, how are you, good sir? You well?
Very well, sir. Very well indeed. As a result of the last couple of results, as a result of the last few results, actually, not just the last couple.
Just a
But
few, mate.
aye, no, all is rosy down Gorgie way. So happy days.
Absolutely, absolutely, Alan. Well, I thought we could start the podcast in a bit of a different manner. So, just to get the necessities out the way, if you aren't subscribed to the Since I Was Young podcast via our YouTube page, please think about subscribing. And if you want to get in contact with our socials as well, all the links are in the description, guys. So please feel free to check them out. So there we got that out of the way, Alan. What a week it has been. What a week it has been. Just to list off some of the brilliant things that have happened for this week. So we've beat our city rivals back to back. Let's you call it like was it like a 6-0 on aggregate. We've scored our highest was tally in one game for the season so far, which was of course was against Aberdeen, but they're in a different was it, a kettle of fish after there was it the cup result last night, but that's that's all to come. We was it Robbie has broke the jinx of never winning at Easter Road. Our championship quality striker Shankland has equalled the goal scoring record for a Hearts season by scoring 20 goals. And lastly, and arguably the most important one, Alan, Ryan Porteous has never and will never beat a Hearts team while he is in a green and white shirt. Where would you love to start, Alan? Which one of those glorious topics would you like to kick things off with?
I think we have to start with the fantastic victory against the third best team in the country.
Oh,
Apparently,
100%, 100%.
yeah, it was funny. I mean, like we kind of said it. There was that much that went on in the game that sitting here reeling it off might take us all night. But
Mm.
I think the sort of the main takeaway from that game that I kind of took into the Hibs game was that we didn't actually play all that well against Aberdeen, and yet we somehow won by five. Like,
Yeah, I like. I mean, you could argue that it's kind of been like that throughout the last three games, like throughout the Derby, like at home, the Aberdeen game, and the Hibs game as well, which I would say arguably the one at East of the Road we probably was probably our I wouldn't say our worst performance, but in terms of like sort of out of the three games, we didn't play all was it that well?
no, no, and I mean, and Robbie pretty much acknowledged it. Like after the Aberdeen game, he kind of said, and the players did as well. They all came out obviously in the build up to the Hibs game talking about we've just scored 5 goals, and I think it was Stephen Kingsley that said something along the lines of we're not our best. We can be better than that. And I think that's true. It was I was sitting watching the Aberdeen game, and I was thinking at halftime, and I'm thinking, how is this 4-0? Like,
Oh, mate,
like
I was thinking, how the
it,
fuck?
it was it was surreal. I mean, it was brilliant. It was
Yeah,
absolutely amazing. But like, I looked at like the Aberdeen team, and like they had Joe Lewis in goal that hasn't played a competitive fixture since last year. So I assume there was an injury to their first choice goalkeeper. They had two midfielders playing in defence. Again, it must have been injury related. I can only imagine. But yeah, like we had, and even like Jim Goodwin said it after the game that we had 6 shots on target and we scored 5 of them. So one of them being a penalty, which you can say whether it was or whether it wasn't, but we don't want to have that debate because we have these debates about penalties every week. It feels like,
mm.
but yeah, it was just like the scoreline of that game definitely flattered us, but
Oh yeah,
in some ways it kind of didn't because we were clinical, and I love that. Like, I absolutely love it.
absolutely. I mean, like you and me was it talked about like sort of this as well when we watched the Hibs game. Like obviously you do have to take into account like the fact that they played was it 120 minutes like at the weekend fought against with the Rangers as well. Now obviously like after the a game itself like me personally, I thought, well, I guess you have to kind of take that into like account as well. But then to kind of counter that point as well, like it wasn't so long ago that like we were doing it like in terms of like was it of a Thursday night and was it the playing was it on a Sunday night as well. So like at that same time as well, like I mean I know that it's not all down to Goodwin's fault, but like if you can't particularly rotate your team, like well, and have that depth like sort of in your squad, was this something that Hearts know to all well about? Then like it will was it come to bite you, and like you said as well, like like the fact that we only had 6 shots on their target and scored 5, it shows that we were was it clinical about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, like you made a good point there about like the depth of the squads as well. I think it's that's a massive point
Oh,
to make because yes, we're getting players back from injury now, or slowly getting players back from injury, but adding Oda and adding Cool and having Stevie Humphreys on the bench as well. That as a front three, and I can't remember if I've said this to you um, on on this or just offline like we do. I would be quite happy with that as a front three, and
mm,
they're all sitting on the bench, and then you add George Grant to the bench, you add Alan Forrest to the bench, and then even the defensive options like I mean Natty Atkinson doesn't seem to be getting the minutes at the moment, but that's due to the fact that Michael Smith is phenomenal, which we'll touch on in a little while, I imagine. But just having that depth and having options off the bench, and Robbie again acknowledged it after a recent game. I think it was after the Hibs tie actually, when he said, the players maybe get tired after an hour or maybe 70 minutes. If you can turn to your bench and bring a player on like Stevie Humphreys, again another player that I want to I want to talk about later. You can bring players like that on, and it raises the level again, and it just shows you the quality in the squad that we have right now, which is amazing. And I saw just quickly before you
yeah,
you move on, like I saw George Grant did an interview with the Evening News not too long ago, and he was talking about he was frustrated at the fact he wasn't getting the minutes, like he wasn't getting the starts.
mm,
But it's he acknowledges it and he says I understand why and I know what I have to do. And I mean, when you look at us, like we haven't lost a game since the World Cup break, since we've come back. So I think that's 8 or 9 games now,
yeah,
without defeat, which has obviously seen us overtake Aberdeen and kind of leave them behind us. But yeah, it's very very difficult for players like George Grant, who I think some fans are a little bit not overly convinced about him yet. But I like George Grant. I think he's a quality player. But for a player like that to be sitting on the bench and hungry to get in,
mm,
it's massive. It's massive, and I think that is something that we have above the likes of Aberdeen, Livingston, who are chasing us as well at the moment. I would put Hibs in that, but they're Hibs, so I don't really see them as much of a challenge at this point. They've got their own issues going on that
mm,
again I'm sure we'll touch on later, shall we say? But
absolutely.
yeah, it's as I said at the start, things are just very rosy at the moment, and it's a very very nice feeling. I don't know about you, but it's I
It's
feel
nice,
bad,
Alan. I
obviously.
know, I
Yeah.
know.
Oh, listen, I have, and again, since we're talking about Aberdeen and Hibs, I have friends and co-workers that are Aberdeen fans and Hibs fans as well, and I feel bad for them, but it's kind of like, well, we know where you've been, we know where you're coming from, but we're not there anymore.
Inj-
So
fucking inject it. Like, I
yeah,
mean,
exactly, exactly.
I mean, like, just to kind of go back, was it to the point you made? Like, was it like with the Grant and the depth like sort of the squad as well? Like, even though we've mentioned it quite a few times, like, I mean, I couldn't. I mean, I could have a stab at it. So, like, on the bench, like against Hibs, like, was it obviously you had the likes of Stewart, Atkinson, Forrest, Humphreys, Cool, Oda, and was that it? Or was
We had
yeah, sorry, go on.
no, we had. I'm just going to reel it off because I've got
Aye,
it in front of me. We had, and again, another one I've not even mentioned. We had Stephen Kingsley on the bench against Hibs.
fucking
You know,
right, right. Like,
and
and
Keo as well. So
uh,
there's options there.
well, mate, like, just like, I mean, if we're gonna look into the future, like, as well, like, there's gonna be a point where, like, all these players, Haring, Boyce, Gordon, Benny, was like, I don't know if I mentioned was Haring, but like, so at the start, but where exactly are all these players? Like, was it going to fit in on the bench? Never mind, like, the starting lineup. But it's a
It's
fucking
crazy.
brilliant thing to have. Like, like, was it just was it like you said there? With Grant being frustrated that he's not getting the time on the pitch as much as he would like, and he's frustrated about it. That's like me personally. That's what I want to hear. Like,
Yeah.
well, can I want players to get frustrated and they put more time? Was it like on the training pitch as well? Because, like, I mean, was it like for players like was it the times you mentioned him at the start? Was it Toby Civic? Like, I'm like our like was it arguably our best back line, like just in terms of the long with longevity, like, Kingsley, Halkett, and Rose, and yet that entire backline was out, and that he was had to step in, and was it, and now look, he's like, I would argue that he's on form right now. I'd say him and Rose are our two top was it centre backs. And, like, the point, like, so just to kind of move the what was it, the subject on. So we did put a post out on Twitter. Was it just asking you guys, was it, is there anything in particular you would, was it, like to talk about? And I believe one of the ones, Alan, I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm sure that you'll have the questions in front of you momentarily. I believe was one of them who would replace Snodgrass once he leaves, or yeah. So
It was. It was.
aye, so like, like again, so, like, in that same sense right now, right? So obviously, let's just say for argument's sake, like, that he's here for next year. Again, just a kind of base on the form that he's in. Who's to say that he won't be with the starting throughout was in next year, like, if he's in the same form that he's in, and, like, when these players start to come back, like, look, as much as was the Benny is fucking amazing, like, and we keep forgetting about him. He's a phenomenal fucking was it a football player, and yet
Oh yeah.
would you put him straight? Was it back in? Was it like in front of us? Was it in front of us? Nordgrass? Me? No. Would you? Would you? What? Like, I mean, just based on form right now, would you put was it was it was it was it Kingsley or Halkett straight back in to the back line? Just was it based on form? No. So, like, it's such a good was a problem to actually have, and I think in terms of the depth of the squad and the quality probably being the most important thing, not just was it just the quantity, like, going back to, like, the was it the clip, was it doing the rounds, was it was it right now, was the interview that Robbie gave 2 years ago, when we lost the Borough Rangers, and you think Robbie out, absolutely. But like, you know what I mean? It's just been an unbelievable, was it a turnaround?
Absolutely. I think the point that you make about Snodgrass is an interesting one, and I think again, like this is the only slight negative that I'll suggest, or the only time I'll put my negative hat on
But don't start to
during this
upset.
episode, because
Was it fans now, Alan? Come on.
as I say, everything is rosy. However, if you look at the games individually,
Mm.
the recent games individually, we watched the Hibs game. We weren't brilliant in that game.
No.
Let's
Yeah.
be honest. We weren't
Absolutely.
brilliant in that game. Um, Aberdeen, we didn't have to be brilliant, but
No.
we won
Yeah.
comfortably anyway. Talking about St Mirren before that, the draw that we played them obviously back to
Mm.
back. We got a draw away and then we won at home. But the away draw, they basically shadowed Snodgrass all over the park and kind of stopped them from playing for large spells of it.
Mm.
So the the one, and it's not so much a negative, it's more the kind of point that for me is something that we might have to look at is, do we over rely on Snodgrass when it comes to that creativity? Because as much as I adore Robert Snodgrass, and I think he's yet to play a game of football wearing actual football boots, he's just been wearing slippers the entire time.
And he's yet to wear, was
There
it, and he's yet to wear the right size of fucking shorts. And oh Jesus, fuck that man's legs. Jesus, fucking choke the life out of me, Alan.
Oh, he's phenomenal. But no, I think that there's a conversation to be had there when you talk about like the creative spark that we have, and we need to maybe find other ways of playing when Snodgrass is maybe not at his creative best, shall we say? And because as good as he is, and he's been fantastic for us, we may well come to a point where opponents start going, just stop him, just stop him, and that cuts it out. But
Hmm.
obviously at the moment that's not happened, or not happened in all that many games, and Snodgrass has spells in games where he's untouchable, and in those spells he creates plenty and we score goals, which is kind of what happened against Aberdeen as well,
Hmm.
and Hibs, to be fair. Um, but yeah, like you say, talking about Snodgrass, I think he's been an invaluable player thus far. Do I see him being a starter next season? At the moment, absolutely. Um, the Stephen Kingsley debate is an interesting one as well, because I had a conversation with someone not too long ago when we were talking about Alex Cochrane, a player that absolutely needs a new contract as soon as possible. Um, I think Alex Cochrane is absolutely outstanding as a centre back, but
Oh.
more so as a left back because he's
Hmm.
a natural left back, so it's understandable. But like you say, what do you do? Do you bring Kingsley in for roles? No.
No.
Do you bring Kingsley in for Civic at the moment? I
No.
don't think so.
No.
Do you bring Kingsley in for James Hill, who's only played what, 2 or 3 games?
And he's
It's
been,
possible.
it's possible, but he has
However,
been relatively was a solid as well, Alan.
yeah, and it is. It's again, it goes back to what you say about having players on the bench, or that are of good enough quality to come into the first team whenever we need them. And I'm not saying that Stephen Kingsley should sit on the bench from now to the end of the season. I think
No.
there's room for him to get back in, and obviously,
Hmm.
God forbid if we have injuries again, then Kingsley can come back in. But at the moment, should he be back in the team? And I saw some people saying it, prior to the Hibs game, because obviously he was past fit for that game, and people were saying, "Oh, Kingsley should come back in because, well, it's Stephen Kingsley, and he's got the experience, etc., etc." But I'm sitting there going, well, this is a defense that's keeping clean sheets at the moment, which is something that at the start of the
Mate,
season we weren't doing all that
no.
regularly. We found a way to keep clean sheets, and again, you and I sat and watched the Hibs game, and for all the possession that they had, and for all the movements that they made, and I had a conversation with somebody else about this not too long ago. Every attacking pattern of play that Hibs did was exactly the same. They tried to go down the wings and then they cut back inside because they couldn't play crosses in. When they did play crosses in, they didn't connect with anyone. And they just kept doing the same thing over and over again. In the Hearts defence, like I said it after the game, that I felt Hibs could have played all night and they wouldn't have scored a goal because we just looked so confident and so composed and so just together. And that shows that obviously the defense that we're putting out now is settled.
Hmm.
So as much as I love Stephen Kingsley,
Yeah.
and as much as you love Andy Halliday, these players shouldn't be able to just walk back into
No,
the team. And it's great that they're not able to.
absolutely, Alan. I mean, just was like would be what we talk about was someone else who I think arguably like we was I talked about it at the weekend there who arguably deserves a brand new was contract as well. Just as I mentioned when we were talking about the depth, just as a side note, is this man human or is he not? To see a clip of our fucking El Capitano back in the gym, legs fucking going, mate. Our wonderful Craig Gordon, mate. Like it just looks like it hasn't was phased him at all. And it's but like in that same sense, I know it's going to take a long time to was it recuperate. Was it get was it back to some was it a sort of fitness? But I'm going to speak for you as well that once I did watch that we was clip, it just left such a warm, fuzzy, sexual, undescribable was a feeling in my heart to actually see him was it training again.
Yeah, yeah, he's a machine. The man is a machine.
Literally,
You're talking about a guy that had a horrific double leg break a month ago,
literally,
literally like a month ago, and I think I saw somewhere that he said that he was walking without crutches in the 2 weeks after it, and you're like, this guy's not human. This guy, he's like the Bionic Man or something. Like he has to
literally,
be. And like we said it like after the injury happened, and I said, look, I wouldn't blame him if he turned around and said, oh, is it worth coming back? But never again will I question the mentality of that man because obviously, yeah, it's a long road, and he's still talking about coming back for preseason next year or
aye,
next summer, if you
yeah,
will. But even then, that's amazing. That's
unbelievable,
just and yeah, like you say, to see the little clips that the club put out of him in the gym and all that, it does. It makes you realize this guy is not finished yet. And
absolutely not.
as much as Xander Clark has been absolutely outstanding, by the way, in
Yeah,
recent games, and obviously we're keeping
well,
clean
yeah.
sheets, Gordon's looking at it going, "I'm not finished yet. Don't forget about me." And I just yeah, it was amazing, absolutely amazing to see it, and you just think this guy, like he obviously broke his arm years ago, came back from that, and now it's like we're never going to be rid of him, and I'm absolutely delighted about it.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. But yeah, it was amazing to was be that. So all the best in the was recovery, Craig Gordon. But just to move on, it was to the point that I was about to make. So obviously, again, I know was it like at some point we will get round to your was it Toby Boy at some point, but just to kind of keep on the subject in terms of turnarounds, like in form. Josh, the speedster, Janelli, 3 goals in the last 2 games. Um, would you give him a contract right now?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, and
Yes.
apparently they're in talks to do it. I
Yep.
saw an article about that. Delighted about that
Yeah.
because Gino, as long term and maybe not even long term listeners, because I was probably saying it a few weeks ago,
Mm.
will know that he is one of the most frustrating players in my mind to watch, or at least he has been in recent months. However, in the not too distant past, he seems to have really found a place in the team
Mm.
and a connection with Shankland. And I think Janelli, like most players, is very much a confidence player. And right now he's playing with confidence. He always seems to turn it on when his contract's nearly running out or when there's rumors that he might be leaving or, I don't know whether he just plays for a new contract or whatever, but yeah, he seems to be a player that needs to feel wanted and needs to feel appreciated. And I think at the moment, that's certainly what we're seeing out of him.
Mm.
I hope that it's quite straightforward to get him to sign a new contract because I don't know, I like him a lot. I have a new frustrating player that frustrates the hell out of me. But anyway, well, again, probably
We'll
talk
talk
about
about
that later as
that.
well. But yeah, Gino surely he has to get a new contract because I think it's important because obviously this month he can talk to other clubs about moving on a free at the end of the season because he's got 6 months left on his deal. So that I hope is, as I say, quite an easy deal to do. But Gino seems to just be quite relaxed about it and just saying, I leave it to the people behind the scenes to deal with it, and I'm just doing my thing on the pitch. And as long as he continues to do his thing on the pitch, I'll be delighted. But the goal he got against Aberdeen, the long throw
Yeah.
from Hill, the first one, I don't know why he's claiming that. Like I've watched that goal multiple times, and I don't see Gino getting the final touch on that. But listen, his second goal in the game was phenomenal, so I'll give him that. But
Absolutely.
yeah, a lot of love for Gino, and he's certainly lost that frustrating tag at the moment.
I get you there, man. I mean, just to go on to the other side of like the pitch, in terms of the frustration, that sort of aspect, as you will, because I'm gonna naturally assume that you were talking about was it Barry Mackay? Yeah, I'm pretty much there with you. What was it like again? Like there's been multiple times where we've talked about him, and like it always like I think in particular this season where like it's always been the kind of like where if he's not on his best form during a game, but then he'll show like the tiny like sort of was it was like sort of was a bit of class, or they'll score a goal, or they'll was it give an assist. That stuff kind of tends to be like I wouldn't say was it brushed over, but like it tends to be forgotten about. Whereas now, you know, like I don't honestly want to sound harsh, but like I think it kind of showed more during the Hibs game. I mean, they open in maybe 10 or 15, and this is not to kind of single him out, but it happened to him quite a few times where, like was it if he was like was it trying to pass to Shankland, or if he was it playing, was it Diags, and was it like across the pitch? It just wasn't happening for him, and I just did want to kind of throw it out there. I mean, well, like I hope it is, but do you think it's kind of was it just a phase, or do you think it's kind of in the same vein as Drino, where he just needs to find that was it confidence again?
I think there's elements of both when it comes to Barry Mackay. I think you're absolutely right. By the way, he is my new frustrating player. Um, and the it's funny because like I'm looking at his stats just now, and like from last season, and this is this kind of rips apart my argument before I've had a chance to make it. But last season he played 33 games in total, started 30 of them, and scored 2 goals and created 10 assists. So 2 goals and 10 assists in 30 odd games is not bad, let's
No.
be honest. This season so far, 22 games played, 4 goals, so already more goals than he got last season. However, only 2 assists. Now, for a team that has a clinical front man in Lauren Shankland, who again we'll probably talk about after, I would be expecting a bit more from Barry. And I know that we've spoken about him before and his connection with Liam Boyce and how how they clicked with each
Mm.
other really well. And obviously Boyce not being there, Barry's having to learn the new kind of players that are around him. But at the same time, aside from Shankland, the majority of the players that are around him were there last year.
Yeah.
So there's kind of positives and negatives, but Barry Mackay is he's a very very good
Oh,
football player.
he's fucking
He's a
brilliant.
very good football player, and when he's in the mood and he can pull it out,
Oh,
and
mate, he's on it. Yeah.
yeah, and it is, but it's so frustrating to watch him sometimes because you go, you're capable of so much more, so much more. and it might be a confidence thing. It might be a change of shape thing because he's kind of the way we're playing just now. He's more sort of in the number 10 rather than being out wide. And I don't know what he prefers. I don't know where he prefers to be. But yeah, it's just not quite clicking for him consistently enough. But then the other side of the argument is if he was clicking consistently, he wouldn't be at Hearts. So there's that side to talk about. But I do think that Barry is one of those that could do with maybe realistic competition for his place in the team. And I don't think we have that as
So,
much as we've signed a lot of new players. Is Stevie Humphreys capable of doing that? Maybe, but we don't know. You'd have to kind of explore it. But I take nothing away from him. I really like Barry
oh
Mackay
yeah,
when he's in full flow and he's hitting shots from outside the box and scores a majority of them. And as I say, he scored already double the number of goals he got last year. But I think it's because we hold him in high standards, isn't it?
oh
Because
yeah,
of the
of
player we
course.
know that he is, or can be. But yeah, just very. He's been a bit off color this season, and I'm sure there's plenty of reasons why that's the case. So I don't want to put him in the bin already, but
No, 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 of course not.
he does need to step it up, and I think he'll know that as well. But I do think as well that as I say, having somebody that can do what Barry Mackay does to maybe just put a little bit of pressure on him and say, well, if you're not performing, somebody can come in and do that job. It
Hmm.
it, it might help. But again, we've not really seen a lot of Oda. We've not really seen a lot of Cool yet. So they may well be the ones that come in and rotate that. But yeah, Barry, he did have a lot of moments against Hibs, and we've already spoken about him in terms of the big game player that we wish that he was, because I don't really remember Barry Mackay taking a big game, say, by the balls and saying, right, I'm going to win this for us, or I'm going to do
Hmm.
something. It's not, he's not really done that yet. And that's also where the frustration comes in. But I do adore Barry Mackay, and I want him to be the best version of himself. And I want the Barry Mackay that, me, I love a little nippy winger. I love a player that can beat a man. I think is brilliant. One of my favorite things to watch in football is a nippy winger skinning a defender. It's brilliant,
Hmm.
and we know Barry Mackay's capable of it because he's done it. But it's like just that little bit extra, maybe that little extra 10% is just not quite there at the moment.
I get you, Alan. I mean, just before we get on to our like our was it our main man, just to kind of throw was a little like a quick fire was a question to you for the next game against fuck I've not done my research on who are we playing?
Livingston away, Livingston
Livingston
away on the
away.
weekend.
Oh shit, right. Do you was it drop him?
I think I do. I think I
That's
do.
hard one, isn't it?
I know. I think it is. It's a difficult one, but like as I say, we'll probably talk about Stevie Humphreys in a minute, but I think he has a shout. I think he came off the bench against Hibs and got 2 assists in that game.
Mate,
Okay,
how many
they had to
times
shuffle it.
I well no mate,
No,
like I mean like in terms of just his like acceleration and his sprint, mate, for a fucking unit, Humphreys can shift, man. Humphreys
oh
can
yeah,
really fucking nail it down.
oh yeah, yeah, and I think as well, like I loved Stevie Humphreys' little cameo off the bench against Hibs where he came on and within the first 5 minutes he'd put Porteous on his arse, which I thought was brilliant.
Oh,
And then you saw him after it, the celebrations after the game where he was mouthing off at their fullback. Is it Kabaya or something? He said
aye.
something. I don't know what it was. I'd
I
have to.
I
I'd love to
think
find out.
I think some of the comments was it being said like there were some ridiculous ones that just made no sense at all. But I think the closest one that I saw and then I watched it back was fucking cunt. Like just I was like, yes, yes, spot on, sir, spot on.
It's a guy that, again, we're talking. We're in January still. There's not been any talk about Stevie Humphreys staying permanently, but he's a player that I think absolutely has to stay.
Yeah,
Yeah, he just gets it. He's adapted to Gorgie, and we've taken him on board as one of our own, and he's been brilliant, you know. And as I say, if it was up to me, if I was Robbie for the Livingston game, I'd be saying, yeah, do you know what, you get a start. Be it Barry Mackay that comes out and we put Shankland in at number 10 because he's been doing that role, and play
Mm-hmm.
Gino and Humphreys up front. I think that would be fantastic. But time will tell. But yeah, Humphreys is hearts as fuck, and he has to stay surely. Fuck going back to Wigan. Who wants to play for Wigan? Colo Torre. I love him. He's an Arsenal legend. But come on, fucking. Nah, stay up the road, lad. Stay up the road. You're loved here, and even Wigan
How
fans. I don't know. Quick one for you before we move on. I saw the limbs in the Hearts End after the Hibs goals, and there were Wigan fans replying to it on Twitter, going, "There's no way Stevie Humphreys leaves that to come back to Wigan," and they've acknowledged it. They've acknowledged they're not getting him back, so we might as well just keep him.
well, mate, like all I'll say on that front, how dare you talk so fucking negatively about Colo Torre? Brendan Rodgers swears by him.
I love Colo Torre. I love Colo Torre as an Arsenal fan. I adore him, but I'm glad that he seems to have forgotten that Stevie Humphreys exists, and I'm
True.
quite happy about that.
Fantastic, fantastic. But yeah, I guess we need to talk about our main man, championship quality, Lawrence Shankland. Was it, as we mentioned at the start there, Alan? 1991-92 season. A wee fat striker called John Robertson scored the highest number of goals in a single was it a season up until that point. And what's that? That's like nearly 30 years on that we have done that. Was it like again in the name of Lawrence Shankland? I mean, just before we talk about that, obviously, like he scored, like against Hibs on the Sunday there. Just tell me, like, how cool and calm was he when he converted that? Was it a penalty strike so well?
The man only scores penalties.
Exactly.
Bouncing penalties for the edge of the box. He's phenomenal.
Mm.
He loves a penalty. He loves a
Oh,
penalty.
100%. But no, like,
He's
like,
just
I
he's
mean,
just
in that same
no
sense,
no
Alan, like, I mean, you know, was it the like? Never mind the goal that he scored, which was phenomenal, and then again, was it as we just was mentioned there, was it Humphreys getting was two assists on the fucking day. What an impact!
phenomenal.
But do you know what? Do you know what meant so much, right? And I had on heart, I have watched this over and over and over again. The celebration and the fans, just literally pandemonium. You could see how much it meant to him, and it was just such a moment. And like, yeah, if he had done that at was it at Tiny, like like would have been amazing. But the fact that we did it in their own was it a backyard, it, undescribable. It was unbelievable scenes.
It was, and somebody actually said something that I didn't kind of take into account. A couple of things actually I didn't take into account. Firstly, that we don't seem to score bad goals at that end of Easter Road. We always seem to score bangers or quality goals into that end of Easter Road,
Mm.
which is very true. I mean, we score good goals at Easter Road most of the time anyway. But yeah, the scenes after that goal were phenomenal.
Mm.
There's people on Twitter showcasing their battered and bruised after they're jumping about celebrations, and I'm like, aye, fucking crack on. Like,
Brilliant.
do you know what? The scenes after all the goals, to be fair, and even Civics at the end as well. The reaction and the atmosphere was phenomenal.
Mm.
Um, Talking about Shankland and talking about the celebration, I didn't actually realize it at the time, and obviously you and I watched the game together. I thought after Shankland scored, he just didn't know what to do or like
Yeah,
didn't know how to celebrate. It wasn't until after, I don't know if you saw it, the club put out the graphic with John Robertson and
mate.
Shankland next to each other with 20 in the middle.
Mate, it was so alike it.
Yeah, and it was clearly a tribute that Shankland has made to John Robertson because it was exactly the same celebration. he's running with his arms out and he's exactly the same. And I'm like, it just shows you that Lawrence Shankland is again another one that's just hearts as fuck. And obviously, Robbie said after the game, the first person that got in touch with him was John Robertson, wanting Lawrence Shankland's number to congratulate him on equaling a record, which was obviously set, as you say, a long time ago. Yeah, he's Shankland, and it's funny, we spoke about him months and months and months ago at the start of the season when we were linked with him, and I said openly, I don't think it's the right move. I don't think he's the right person. And yeah, as I say, weeks on from my public apology, he's gone and scored 20 goals, which is amazing.
Well, mate, like I
I
mean, sorry to interrupt. Sorry.
no. I was just gonna say I adore him, and I hope that he goes on and breaks records and sets his own records, and I hope that we don't have to wait 30 years for somebody to break another record
Oh,
that maybe he sets.
uh, uh,
But yeah, he's phenomenal, and I think a huge part of it has to go to Robbie Nielsen for the fact that Robbie obviously really wanted him, saw him as this massively important player in the team, has obviously given him the captaincy, which has pushed him on even further. But yeah, he's just incredible, and to watch him play, and it's not just the goals; it's his all round play that is just brilliant. He's dropping in, like I said earlier, he's dropping into that number 10 role and doing what Boyce used to do with a link up play, and he's letting Gino run off him and all the rest of it. He's just a very, very good football player. And I think we are very, very fortunate and very lucky that he is at Heart of Midlothian.
absolutely, my man. I mean, just on this, well, was it just a few things? I mean, on the subject of was it of the records as well? I might be wrong, and please for give me who put the stat out. I believe he did set another record as well. It was something like he's only the third Hearts player in history to score three consecutive times against Hibs. I don't know
Yeah,
if that's right, but like what I mean,
no,
like that was it like in itself is ridiculous, and the other thing as well, like was it just as you mentioned at the end there as well, like we've had the same thing like since we started the podcast. We had our doubts about was it about Halkett. We had it well, like I mean, I certainly had my almost like sort of doubts about Civic as well. We touched a bit on Snog, like on Snog with the grass as well. Halliday. But mate, if we've ever been wrong about a player ever to play for that Hearts team, it has got to be fucking Shankland. Like the man
ah,
is just I, I can't like
yeah,
explain it because
I
I'm just
know,
smiling about him. Like, what I mean? I'm just
I
smiling
know.
at the fact that he's just turned out just to be arguably the best signing that we've made since like since was it Rob since was it Robbie came back, since we got Joe was it Savage in, and this new kind of way of recruitment. But aye, he's just hearts as fuck, eh? Man,
Yeah,
he's just hearts as fuck, mate.
he is, and he's just, as I said, he's a really, really good striker for how we play, and it's showing. And listen, I know people, and I say this, but it's not Hearts fans because Hearts fans don't give a fuck. People seem to be complaining and calling him a penalty merchant and all the rest of it, and you go, doesn't matter,
And what?
and I exactly. But at the end of the day, it's like a goal's a goal. You know, there's been more penalties awarded this season than any other season in Scottish football, but that's because we've got VAR and you're
Mm.
getting near enough penalties every week. If we've got a player that is capable of scoring penalties with the regularity that Shankland is, what difference does it make?
Well,
Would
yeah.
would would Hibs be complaining if Kevin Nisbet was scoring goals from penalties? Would would Celtic be complaining if Kyogo was scoring penalties? Would they be
They'd be
complaining?
complaining anyway for fucking all
Well,
the conspiracy theories flying about, mate.
but but this is the thing. Like, if if Shanklin was doing it for any other club in the country, they'd be saying, well, he's scoring goals. It doesn't matter how they go in. So we as Hearts fans are sitting here going, yeah, okay, maybe half of his goals have been penalties. Who gives a fuck? Like,
Exactly.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The ball's in the net. That's what counts. And Shankland is doing it on a regular basis. And you go, well, just fucking have a day off. Honestly, have a
I
fucking day off.
I know,
This
mate.
is
Sorry,
no, I
go
was
on.
just going to say, like, this is a guy who is a young Scottish striker. And there was all the debate before the Hibs game about, oh, Shankland versus Nisbet, who's better, and all this stuff. I'm not going to deny that, Nisbet's a good striker. He
Aye.
is. When he's in form, he's a good striker. But he's not Shankland. And I'm saying that with my neutral hat on. Lauren Shankland for me is the complete striker.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing it for us. And yeah, he's just I've already said everything I have to say about him, but like he's outstanding. And I said it to you after the Hibs game. I don't know how many goals he's going to score this season because
Mate, I said it here first, and I said it on was it on Sunday? Was it big as well? The boy is getting was it 30 goals. I'm saying it right now. If he's going was it 20 before if it was a February, and if we get the was it the run of the Scottish Cup as well? Granted, was it when we go to face them Hamilton, we won't have them there, but mate, who's to say that you can't? So like, let's say, so we played what? We played 22 games so far in the league.
I believe
Why?
so.
Right. And we play 38. What was it every season, right? So he's got 16. No, math. Yes, was it 16 games to actually go, right? Let's just say if he averages like 1.5 was it goals a game, mate.
Listen, he could do it. He could do it. And I think
Alan,
the
say it. He'll
biggest
fucking do it. Stop saying he could or he might. Say he'll do it. Come on, son.
fuck it, fuck it. Let's do it. Let's fucking do it. All aboard the Shanklin to 30 train. Hell, we might get 10 penalties in the next 5 games, and he might score all of them. But you briefly mentioned it there, the sending off against Hibs, and I just wanted to touch on it
Oh,
because
mate, let's fucking go there, please.
it's never, ever, ever a sending off. The second yellow card, okay, his foot's high and there's maybe a little bit of contact, but I don't even think there is. The first yellow card, what was that for? Like, he was it not Bashiri or one of their daft players that pushed him over? And
Yeah,
Shanklin essentially got booked for being pushed over.
yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck is that about? The annoying thing is obviously you can't appeal it because it was two yellow cards. The positive, if you want to call it a positive, is that he's only going to miss one game and it's a
Yeah.
cup tie against Hamilton that we
Should
should
win. Yeah.
should be able to win without him in the
Mm.
team. But you never know. But yeah, it was totally bizarre. And yeah, like there was no need. There was absolutely no need to send him off. They said it on Sports Scene after it. They were talking about it and they said, this is an Edinburgh derby. Like, let it go. Like, just let the game go.
Flow.
Like,
I like, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. But yeah, anyway, that was pretty much the only. I mean, I say a downer on Shankland. It wasn't a downer on Shankland. It was because the referee was fucking hopeless. But
Mm.
yeah, like if he gets 30 goals this season, that'll be phenomenal. And he, as I say, our attacking play is set to create chances for Shankland.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why he can't hit that target. I'd love to see him do it. I would love to see him do it. And for the pure and simple fact that you're the only person so far that I've heard saying it. So if he does do it, then
We'll
you
put
heard it here
yeah.
first, sort of
We'll
thing.
we will put an official was it a tweet out. Was it that Shanks will score was it for 30 goals this season? Now for all Hearts fans, greatest was it like apologies. Now watch was it Shanklin not score for the rest of the season. But as we move on, this is obviously going to be your was it, section, Alan, because I've left it till like near the end because obviously this is obviously your was a moment and that was it and was it this is your star was it a child like you mentioned it well we were was talking about was it Shankland, and one of many the guys in that squad that is just become hard as fuck is was it Toby Sibic. Again, like when I watch back the goals this afternoon, like obviously it was only about what there was like 8 minutes of extra time, which just to add on, where the fuck did that was it come from? But was it anyhow? Um, you know when Hibs like was it got the corner in, no Hearts player was fucked at that point. It was like, all right, okay, I guess out. Like was it was was it Toby passed it to Humphrey by that point, and he was the only one that's like, get what, I'm fucking away with this, man, honestly. And like he had a chance like maybe 10 minutes before. And mate, I've never seen you so excited in your life. Like you literally were on your feet at that point, saying, "Holy shit, what the fuck's happening?" But then to see it again, and we're like, "Why?" But like, mate, he was fucking determined to drive up that was it the park, and not just the fact for being was a central defender. Mate, that was one of the most calm and composed chips I've ever seen in my life against a former was a Gotland was a number one. Like, what do you say? What do you say? Like the man is just oh mate.
I can say one thing and one thing only. I mean, I can say lots about him, and I will, but I'll simply start it off with he loves the fucking Gorgie.
He
Does
loves the
Toby
fucking
Sibic.
Gorgie.
And the man, I mean, I call him a man. He's 20. Looks like I mean, he is a man, but he's a very young guy at the moment in terms of a football player's career. He's gone on such a journey over the last few months, and I think before I even talk about the Hibs goal, and before I even talk about the way that he played in the Hibs game, because I thought he was
Mm.
phenomenal for the 90 minutes. I thought he was brilliant, man of the match by a distance.
Mm-hmm.
He's gone through so much already in his time at Hearts. He's been booed when he's been coming on as a sub, booed when his name's read out, booed when he makes a mistake. He's a young guy. Young players make mistakes, and I said it a long time ago that these are the sort of things that you have to just accept. A young player is going to make a mistake, and it's difficult. If a defender makes a mistake, chances are it might lead to us conceding a goal,
Mm.
unless you've got Craig Gordon in goal, who's phenomenal. But yeah, listen. Toby Sibic has been on one hell of a journey. There was an article he did a long time ago about speaking to a sports psychologist and the pressures of being at a club like Hearts and all of that stuff. And he's turned a massive corner in recent games, recent weeks, recent months, to the point now where I kind of the Toby Sibic story
Yeah.
or the comeback story is kind of complete. This is a guy that, as I say, I think people have realised we need to put our arm around this kid.
Mm.
That this guy needs the support because you can see it. When the fans are singing his name, you can see it. He plays with such confidence, and it boosts him. It would boost any player, and I've said this before. But yeah, he's just phenomenal. And the Hibs goal, and it's funny, the chance that you talked about that was about 5 or 10 minutes before
Yeah.
his actual goal. I'm pretty certain I said to you that if Toby Sibic scores in this game, I'm streaking down Gorgie Road.
And I left your flat immediately. Immediately after he scored the goal.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm pleased to confirm I did not do that because it was a very cold day on Gorgie Road. It was a very cold day.
Yeah, it
Nobody
was
wants to
actually.
see that. Trust me. But yeah, listen, he's as I say, he's done amazingly well to kind of put all that on his shoulders and say, do you know what? I'm ready. I'm ready for this. And the goal was amazing. I don't know if you saw it, but the Hearts TV commentary that Laurie and Jimmy did was hilarious. It was absolutely brilliant,
Absolutely brilliant.
and it's made up of the fact that, as Humphreys plays the ball to Civic, and he's obviously bombing through, and you hear Jimmy Sanderson say, "Take it to the corner, take it to the corner, head for the corner, head for the corner," and
Does he fuck?
Laurie just goes mental, and it was amazing. And all of I've watched that goal multiple times, as people will imagine, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that has, but there's been so many versions of that goal with the different commentary, and they've all been unbelievable to watch and to relive it. Obviously, we weren't there in person, unfortunately, but you feel like you were. And I wish I was. I wish I was, because to me, that moment, it's, as I say, it's the Toby Civic comeback story, and it's that arc of, that's it. That's, he's cemented himself as a fan favorite at this point. If he wasn't already, he's just, yeah. And the celebration after the goal, I thought was brilliant. Just blocking out the noise and doing his thing. You saw at the end of the game as well, the celebrations with the players in front of the fans, and they were pushing him to the front because they know how much he needs that. Because he's
Absolutely.
clearly a young guy that is full of confidence right now, and it's amazing to see. And I mean, just before I kind of pass it back to you, there was a story that broke today about Blackpool.
Oh,
Uh,
fuck.
they, I know they have recently appointed Mick McCarthy as their manager, a man that I swear has managed every lower league English football club at some point. They made a bid for Toby Civic of, apparently, and I don't know if it was confirmed what the amount was, but the rumor that I heard was 600,000. Now, first of all, which one of
No.
his boots would you like? Which one of his boots would you like for that? Because that's all you're going to get for that amount. Blackpool. Let me just sum this up. Blackpool, Edinburgh, European football, English Championship, potentially League One football. It doesn't really need much explanation, and I'm delighted that it seems as if Joe Savage has laughed it out the building and just deleted it from the email inbox and said, "Aye, away you go," because he is outstanding, and he is still very young. I hope, and I mentioned it earlier about Alex Cochrane in the sort of need to get new contracts on the table. I hope Toby Civic is one that is on the list of players that should be receiving a new contract in the not too distant future, because if anybody deserves it more, I don't know who they are.
Well, I mean, was it thank you was it very much for that inspiring speech, Alan? I mean, just to kind of take away from that, I mean, just from what you mentioned, like in terms of like, was it like the confidence that is achieved, you know, the bond that he's got with the players and the fans as well. The thing that I kind of take from him is that you just always see him with a smile on his face, and that's what you was like you want to see. And I believe I saw it. I think it was Adam Fraser that put it up. Like not to it was a quote him like sort of was a word that was like sort of was a by word because Lord knows like sort of me and was the research, but this is the first time in a long time that between the squad, the fans and the ultras, things are going well. Like sort of on the park, things going great. Like was it off the park as well? As a whole, I think this is the first time in a long time that I've seen just an all round togetherness as such. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen like was it like of course like in general like every time we was a beat Hibs or score a brilliant goal at was it Easter Road. The fans go absolutely mental, but I don't know what it was about this time round. I think like I can't particularly put my finger on it, but there was just something there that just felt so special, like in the sense that so many things happened, like with was it Toby Sibic, was it Shankland, the fact that was it the Robbie who we didn't yet to talk about, like broke that was it was it Jinx it was it Easter Road, just so many things, so many kind of was it feelings were sort of was it going on at once, and I don't know why that game in particular, as opposed to the last one we played, it just felt like such a special sort of was a day, and yeah, I mean, would you agree that it's the first time in quite a while that you've just seen such? Was it like it to was it governance? Was it that sort of was it was it the vibe that a buzz like around the club like sort of right now that things are just going really well?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's accurate. I think, and I kind of was thinking about this the other day, and I'm not saying I've come up with a reason, but I think there's elements that, you know, to me, you look at the situation and the way the club's built behind the scenes and the way the club's being run behind the scenes, everything seems to be in line, which is great. Robbie seems to be held in very high regard by the likes of Joe Savage and Budge, obviously, and Andrew McKinley, the CEO and all the rest of it. So they're all together, they're all united, as you say. I think in terms of the playing squad, there's a mix of players at Hearts at the moment in terms of what they've come from. Like you've got players like Stevie Humphreys, although he's a lone player, George Grant, Toby Sibic, Alan Forrest, you know, players, and I'm sure there's others that people can say Hearts is the biggest club that they've played for, and consistently. I'd even throw Alex Cochrane into that, although he was at Brighton, didn't make the breakthrough. So there's maybe an element of some of these players realize how lucky they are to be at a club like Hearts because we are in a good place and it's great, and they don't realize how lucky they are because, they've landed on their feet and it's amazing. And then you have players like Andy Halliday, Lawrence Shankland, boys that have been in Scottish football before, Craig Gordon, Hal Kett, these guys that have been around Scottish football for a while. Okay, Shankland went away and came back, but there's just a real mix within the squad right now. And I think that for me is certainly a reason as to why
Hmm.
they're all just given 100% because things are brilliant right now. And you don't know how long it's going to last. You don't know. Listen,
No.
football's a funny game. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But the team just seems, like you say, to be together and to be, everybody just seems to be fighting for each other. And it goes back to what we said earlier about players wanting to get in and wanting to play and wanting to be in the starting 11 because everybody wants to be in a team that's playing well and winning games. You don't want to be sitting on the bench. And even the new boys, like I saw at the Hibs celebrations at the end when they were all up clapping the fans, you saw Garang Kuel up there, you saw Oda up there as well. Oda looked totally overwhelmed, but he would. It's brand new for them, and they don't. I think as well, it's a case of maybe from the outside, these players didn't realize how big a club Hearts was until they actually come up
Oh yeah.
and play and see that level of support. And I mean, an Edinburgh derby pumping of your rivals is great, but when you do it twice in the space of 2 weeks, it's even better, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, just before we go on to the last was it topic, you threw out was it like a question there before we started recording? So that is now nine. Was it Derby games on was it on beaten as of now? Here we go, 10 in a row. How many? I mean, well, like it was yourself that threw. Was it the question? Was it to, like was it to myself? And it's something that we could also throw on. Was it to the Twitter page as well? But Do you want to throw out like a rough like was it a figure into how many the games like we can turn it like sort of this was it into like was it on this run? Can we go 22 in a row again?
I would love it. I would absolutely love it. Hibs are in a mess right
Shite.
now. Aye. um, on so many levels. Like I said about Hearts being together behind the scenes and the playing staff, etc. Hibs are
Oh,
not.
mate,
Uh,
shite. We honestly like if Hibs was a shite would you think that shit stinks? Like you know what I
so true,
mean?
so true. Couldn't have put it better than that, to be honest with you.
You're
But
welcome.
yeah, I don't know what a number would be because Hibs need to sort their shit out essentially. But derbies are derbies. You never know how they're going to
Mm.
go. But at the moment, we look good. They look shite. It's quite easy to say it could be a while. Hibs are certainly in a bit of a rebuilding job at the moment. But yeah, fuck it. Let's say 22. Fuck it. Let's try and break another. Let's
Yes.
Lauren Shanklin's breaking records. Why the fuck not? Let's go 23. Fuck
Let's
it.
go 23. Why not, sir? Love this, mate. Well, but as I said, we'll throw that out onto the Twitter page. If you have a rough, what was the figure, and how it was in many games, we can go unbeaten against the shite. So, Alan, I think we can. Was it end things? Was it of this glorious? Was it podcast so far? The one that I've probably most enjoyed for quite a long time. Um, I'm gonna kind of talk about this and to start it in a weird way. And it was something that you mentioned, like I think it was only about maybe like a few weeks ago. So obviously we're going to talk about was it Robbie Nielsen? Like there's been the rounds on Twitter was today, like was it where the interview that he did was it post match after the defeat by was it Rower Rangers was it back in the cup 2 years ago, the turnaround that he's done, like like was it like essentially was it like in terms of like all the Robbie outs, especially now, like you've got to kind of put it into some sort of was it context. Like I can say he's done like a phenomenal job, and yeah, like he's had was support from was it like his was it a backroom staff. Joe was Savage as well, but it's been down to him to kind of orchestrate that, and he's done it was it brilliantly. However, just to kind of start this was a topic of in a strange way, and I never ever thought about it, and I think it was you that rightly was pointed it out that nobody's was to mention in it. So we often was it talk about was it players who are in form, doing well, and we think, oh well, we was better not getting used to it because they might not be here for that much longer. What's to say, Robbie, like just on the form that he's in, was it as a manager? Who's to say that a team could actually like was it in acquire like about his services? Um, I'd like to think that he's not silly enough to make the same mistake twice, like like in regards to was it going down to was Caden Don's in his first was tenure, but is that really something that we should be taking into was into like account, or do you think it's just you know like do you think that that's just sort of something that's probably not was going to happen?
Well, I mean, I think you're quite right to mention it. Obviously, him and his coaching staff signed new contracts not that long ago,
Mm.
so there's that element of security that the club has if such a thing was to happen. It's it's not something I like to think about, but the way that English football, because you would imagine that's probably where he would
Yeah.
go. The money that's involved at certain levels of English football, it shows you. You know, I mean, we spoke about Blackpool making a six-figure bid for Toby Sibbick of £600,000. You know, as much as we're in a good position financially, I don't think we're in a position where we could bid £600,000 for a player. Certainly not in one big
No.
payment. Maybe we could, but to me, we're maybe not quite there yet. Again, we'd love to be wrong on that because it means that we're rolling in the money, which we are. I think Robbie, when he left the first time, or when he left the last time rather, was young and maybe a little bit naive at what he was promised. Went down south, didn't work for him. Came back up the road because he knew, Scottish football was his bag. And yeah, I'd like to think that Robbie knows that he's got a good thing at Hearts. And I do think there's a huge element of he wants to win a cup. He wants to be successful. He wants to win trophies. He talks about third place, but third place isn't a trophy. He talks about chasing the old firm, but that's not a trophy either. And you do have your select people, and there's less of them now than there used to be, that are still Robbie out, or they're not, maybe not Robbie out exclusively, but they're not Robbie fans, shall we
Hmm.
say. And that's fine. That's fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. And there's people out there that say, oh, Robbie's not been a success at Hearts until he wins a trophy. And I can kind of subscribe to that to an extent. However, like you mentioned, you look at Brora and where we were then, and you look at where we are now, and it's like a different football club.
Mm-hmm.
And the person that is at the heart of that is Robbie Nielsen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, so yeah, I mean, to go back to your question, I don't think he would be tempted to go. Certainly not now. Maybe a year, 2 years down the line, if we win something and then we go on another European journey, however long that lasts. But yeah, listen, Robbie is, again, we've used this phrase a few times today. Robbie is Hearts as fuck. And Robbie loves the fucking Gorgie as well. So loves the ultras as well, by the way.
Yeah, I know he does.
Don't know if you yeah, don't know if you saw that. It was an
That's
article and he was talking about them. He said they've added something and it's great, to hear Robbie acknowledging it, it puts, massive credit on their backs and says, look, give these guys a section, give the ultras a section of Tynecastle for themselves, because that would amp things up even further. And Robbie's talking about that. But yeah, listen, I don't I'm not saying it's impossible that Robbie would leave, but I don't think it'll happen now. And the longer that things are good at Gorgie, and the longer that things are good at Tynecastle, and the longer that things, continue in an upwards scale, I don't see him going. Maybe, I mean, the only sort of minor point is, we're apparently not a big team because we don't own our own training ground, so that might be enough to
Oh
force
yeah,
him
no, no,
to
no,
go down the road.
absolutely,
That
sir.
might be enough to force him to go down to England again potentially. But no, aside from that, I think Robbie and his coaching staff are here for the foreseeable.
I like that, man.
And
No,
no,
go
just
on.
just briefly, kind of before I finished it there, I'm kind of warming to skinhead Robbie Nielsen. I don't know about you, but I'm
Oh,
kind of like
I
I'm
saw a
I'm kind of
picture.
get. I know
I
what you're
saw a
gonna say.
picture with the long hair, and then it was to like his shorter hair, and then this skinhead.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this as well, like before the game started. Was it was it like on Sunday there? This is a fucking good looking Hearts team, and it makes me question everything, Alan. It really does. Even Robbie as well. Like
He's he's
it,
rocking it. To be
it
fair, he's
looks
rocking
like
it.
he'd manhandle you. And we even I talked about like Cullick as well, where as the fact that you could almost like pretend it's anybody did want it to actually be, like you couldn't see fuck all. But yeah, it's a fucking babe of a Hearts team. It really is. It really is.
Oh, but yeah, he seems to be like that. That skinhead look is he's really embracing it. He's really
Oh,
embracing it, and
mate, I'm
I.
embracing it to fuck.
But yeah, it's as I say. To round it off, I don't think that Robbie gets enough credit, maybe, and some that might be a controversial thing to say, but I don't think he gets enough credit for where we were and where we are. Um, you can talk parallels with Aberdeen and Hibs, who are apparently two teams that we should be measuring ourselves against. I don't know why. They have gone through a lot of changes over the last 2 years,
Mm.
realistically. Aberdeen had Stephen Glass, and that was a whole disaster. Now they've got Goodwin, and apparently he's staying. I just looked at my phone just in between times there, and apparently he's staying for now, which I have no idea why. Hibs have had 6 managers since 2019. So, they've probably had about 200 players in that time.
Mm.
Yeah, and we've benefited from the stability of Robbie Nielsen. And yes, there's been a turnaround of players, but the levels have gone up, and that is why we are where we are. And you know, I want us to be the third force in Scottish football, and I'd love for that to be the case, but that will require season on season finishing third and making cup finals, which we have done. We've been in 3 of the last 4 Scottish Cup finals, which is amazing as well. And yeah, like I say, it's I don't. I'll finish it off by saying I don't know what more Robbie Nielsen can do. You know, if you're Robbie out, fine. Do you know what? I don't want to have that conversation because for me, I find it very, very difficult to understand how somebody can be Robbie out the way things are
Mm.
right now.
Well,
Um,
we can throw that up on what was it on to the Twitter page about to actually ask if there's anybody out there that does was a, was a follow the podcast. Like, if you actually are was a Robbie out style and explain yourself.
well, exactly. Listen, as I say, I said at the start of this little section, I'm not saying that we all have to, put Robbie on a pedestal and say he's the greatest manager in the world. But if he wins a trophy this season, which I would love to see him do, I'd love nothing more than Robbie Nielsen to win a trophy. I'm actually quite gutted that he was in the stand for Easter Road because I think, and I said it on Twitter, the biggest injustice of the Edinburgh Derby was that Robbie Nielsen wasn't allowed on the pitch to celebrate with the players and with the fans because that was a massive game for him.
Hmm.
You spoke about him breaking that getting that monkey off his back in terms of winning at Easter Road. The fact that obviously, I mean, he enjoyed himself in the stand and that's brilliant, but there was a part of me that was just like, do you know what, Robbie, just fuck the SFA, just go on the pitch, fuck them, just go on the pitch and celebrate with your players because you deserve it just as much as they do.
100%, mate. 100%. Well, to kind of wrap things off, Alan, obviously in the in the words of you, massive game at the weekend there. But to be fair, it actually is. And to be honest, like we talk about, like how these last like sort of was a few games have been almost was season defining. I think this one in particular, you could actually argue actually is. So obviously where was it like away to was it Livingston who actually still have a game in hand. We're sitting 7 points in front of them on 38. If we beat them, would you be fairly confident that that's third place pretty much secure before was it February?
I would. It would certainly put us in a very, very, very strong position if we're not in one already. So yeah, no, it'll be a tricky game. There's no doubt. Martindale's got Livingston playing a certain way. Tough place to go. Not the greatest pitch in the world, as we all know. So yeah, it'll be a difficult game. But again, like I say, confidence is high. Players are happy. It's we've not lost a game since the World Cup break. It would be amazing to get another win and, like you say, increase that gap on the so-called third best team in the country and Livingston. But yeah, like it would be amazing, and I
Mm.
hope that we do it, and I believe that we can win. I
Yeah,
believe that we will. I believe that we will. I know Livingston are good, but yeah, as I say, and it's been the theme throughout this. Everything's rosy at the moment, and I just
absolutely.
feel it's so much. It's so easier. It's so much easier to be positive when everything is good.
A
You know what I mean?
hundred, 100%.
You get swept away in it, and you kind of start thinking, could we do this? Could we do that? What could we do? But yeah, I think we'll win against Livingston.
Absolutely, sir.
Score line for me, do you know what? Let's go another clean sheet. Let's go 2-0. And you just said it
Hey,
exactly the same
legend,
time
this
as me.
boy. Well done. Everyone is on the same page. Fucking Rosie. Love that. Well, you've heard it from me and Alan. We're going with a 2-0 win. And obviously, like as always, we would love to hear your predictions for the weekend. Do you think Robbie deserves a way bit more credit was it that he does at the moment? And do you think Shanklin will break 30 goals this season? So, as always, guys, thank you very much for watching this week's episode of the Since I Was Young podcast for all things Heart of Midlothian. And if you aren't subscribed yet via our YouTube page, please think about subscribing. And if you want to check us out on our socials as well, you certainly can. All will be in the description. So, Alan, thank you very much for joining me as always, and let's hope this rosy feature carries on for the foreseeable. And for the rest of you who are traveling through to the game at the weekend, we hope you have a good one, and we will see you next time. You all take care. Bye for now.